In this video, I describe possible improvements to motherhood because every improvement has an enormous impact on society. This is not an attempt to demean mothers, but to point out a common mistake, the correction of which can have a tremendous effect on our society. We know that motherhood carries enormous responsibility. It can bring heaven, but it can also bring hell. Something similar, though much less serious, would be having all the money in the world, or ruling over all nations. Such responsibilities can be used to create a great deal of good, but also a great deal of harm. That's why I believe every contribution to this subject is important. I am aware of the huge sacrifices mothers make, such as constant interruptions of sleep, limited freedom of movement, and so on. Yet, despite that, there is much that can be improved. This video focuses on only part of it. As always, everything comes down to love, because love is the essence of everything around us. In fact, it would be enough to simply say, mothers should feel love as often and as deeply as possible, and people raised by such mothers would be remarkable. I could end the video right here. But because the understanding and feeling of what true love really is differ from person to person, we need to continue further. The most important thing is not to regard the child as property. Things can be considered our property, though even those are borrowed only for the span of our lifetime, but never people. Even between partners, if one partner views the other as property, suffering follows. To exaggerate a bit, some mothers say to themselves, I carried my child, gave birth to it, and raised it. Therefore, it should obey me, bring me joy, and later help me in old age. But this is a selfish, calculating attitude. And it is clearly wrong because experience shows that if a mother constantly tries to direct her child's life according to her own vision, the child suffers. Its psychological development is stunted because it learns less from its own mistakes and experiences. And when the child suffers, the mother suffers too. To free oneself from this idea of owning the child, it's enough to realize that the child's body and mind form in the mother's womb without her conscious control. She only notices some outer effects: weight in the belly, increased appetite, reduced mobility, strain on muscles, bones, and joints, or other physical discomforts. But she is not consciously directing the creation of the child's body and mind. The human mind can't even put a roll back together from crumbs, let alone build a living being out of molecules taken in from food and air. The process inside the mother's body is unimaginably complex, and her mind can't follow it, the assembling of molecules in precisely the right way. So the child's development happens such that the mother is simply the space for this. From the perspective of the mind, an unbelievably complex process. The mother's body and mind are merely witnesses and intermediaries. She did not construct the child at all. It came through her. As for any debt the child supposedly owes the mother for its existence, let's be honest. Parents often have children for their own benefit, for higher social standing, joy, companionship, or the hope of having someone to care for them in old age, and not so much for the sake of the child itself, about whom they know nothing in advance. It is hard to do something for someone who does not yet exist. Besides, the child would not mind at all if it had never been conceived, because then there would be no mind in which such thoughts could arise. What bothers the child is losing its body and mind only after it already has them. If no one ever conceived it, there would be nothing there to mind. So it is normal and wise to regard the child as an equal partner, not as an inferior debtor. A small child should therefore be treated with great respect, as if it were the mother's very honored guest. Many will say, "But the Bible says, 'Honor your father and your mother.' But it also says, 'Love your neighbor as yourself.' That means the mother is not in a superior position over the child. If she feels superior, then what she feels is not true love."
If motherhood is to improve, mothers cannot simply repeat everything their own mothers did. At least something must be done differently. Often, mistakes are made unconsciously by repeating the mistakes of previous generations. During pregnancy, a mother should not only avoid alcohol and drugs such as cigarettes. The essential thing is that during those 9 months, she should also avoid negative emotions, since all negativity comes from some form of fear. Every negativity transmits through tension, vibrations, and so on, directly to the child in the womb. The child feels their mother's anger or fear. The mother must, for those 9 months, give up anger, fear, and so forth, even if it costs her some respect in society. This is a great responsibility which later pays off enormously. If her child were to become a new Buddha, the mother would feel like she was in heaven. It is worth the sacrifice. And in most cases, it is not really even a sacrifice. It only seems so. If the mother spends those 9 months meditating, rejecting negativity, and so forth, it will actually push her forward spiritually. She herself can, through giving birth, be reborn into a new, more conscious being. Husbands know how much a woman changes when she becomes a mother. From all this, it follows that a mother cannot neglect her child, but neither should she be excessively nervous or stressed if she doesn't want her child to later suffer. Excessive care is not good care. It usually stems either from fear or from the desire to control the child. To avoid being overly stressed, it helps to remember that the child largely develops on its own, and the father can also provide food, warmth, and education if necessary. If the mother worries unnecessarily, that worry becomes needless negativity that harms the child. The mother should love her child, advise it, and help it, but not force it to act and think the way she wants. If she gives it space and freedom, the child can grow into a wonderful being. If she instead tries to control it and constantly pressures it to act and think as she wishes, it will cause suffering between them, much suffering. Some mothers may say, "But I only want what's good for my child." But does she really know what is good? First, her opinion may not be the best, and it is possible the child will do better if it follows its own way. Second, it is good if the child learns, under parental supervision, to learn from its mistakes, and if it also experiences a little cold and hardship. A child needs to learn to solve problems on their own. For a mother who does not understand the essence of true love, a child's independence looks like distancing itself. But the opposite is true. A happy child who learns to navigate the world without fear will later have a much better relationship with their mother than one forced to always obey. The freedom given to a child is written about even in relation to the most famous human of Europe, America, and Australia. When Jesus was only 12 years old and returning from a festival with a caravan, his parents did not even notice that he had stayed behind in Jerusalem. So they did not keep him under constant supervision. Imagine today's mother traveling with a 12-year-old son without a cell phone, and the boy doesn't appear even overnight.
And when, after 3 days, they finally found him, frightened, Jesus calmly replied, "Why were you looking for me? Didn't you know I must be about my Father's business?" By Father, he meant his true essence, love. That means he must devote himself first to his inner self, his true nature, meditation, awareness of his essence, love. That comes first, and for that he must have freedom. He cannot always remain beside his mother. A small child is initially forced to obey its mother in everything, as it is very vulnerable. Without obedience, it could die, being nearly completely dependent on her. So it often obeys, but dissatisfaction and inner suffering grow, and it may love her less over time. In addition, sons unconsciously seek their mother's image in their partners, while daughters unconsciously seek their father's image among men. And this is more about a psychological image than a physical one. For example, if a son dislikes his mother, who was his only image of a woman for a long time, it is very likely that he will dislike his partner too, seeing in her his mother's image. Similarly, men who fear women once feared their mothers. A man, under his wife's thumb, simply had a very dominant mother, and in marriage, he subconsciously projects his mother onto his wife. If a child grows up not in a community, but only between a mother and father, it forms its subconscious image of a woman from its one mother. Only someone who realizes that such an image of the mother or father is lodged in the subconscious, and that he subconsciously seeks it out in adulthood, can consciously change it, if he chooses to, and be happy with a partner who doesn't resemble the parent at all. It is very beneficial if a small child is taken into nature and allowed to spend time with animals, plants, and other living beings. This teaches the child, in addition to many other things, an important lesson: that love can be felt not only toward men or women, but toward all living beings. That love is everywhere and does not depend on another person. The more preserved nature is, the more biodiversity it holds, the greater concentration of love the child can feel there.
children often also learn unfairness from their parents. If the mother forces the child to always obey and always take her side, eventually the situation will arise where she argues with someone else, perhaps another woman, and she is wrong. The child often feels that the other woman is right, but is forced to side with its mother, thereby learning unfairness.
It should now be clearer what it means when a mother feels unconditional love for her child, when she loves it purely from the joy of that feeling, when she helps the child grow purely from the joy of watching it grow. Fathers also carry great responsibility, though less than mothers. After all, the child lives 9 months directly in the mother's body, so the connection is stronger. And even after birth, children usually spend more time with their mothers than with their fathers. A final note. If a man wants to gain even a slight sense of what happens to a woman when she becomes a mother, and what the bond between mother and child is like, if he wants a glimpse of what a mother feels for her child, he can create something artistic. For example, he can write a beautiful poem or compose a beautiful song. For him, it will be as if he has given birth to something beautiful. He will feel joy, even though it was only a poem or a song.